Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Move with Momentum podcast. Bruce Breedlove here with John Brooks, the dynamic duo of the podcast. John, I listened to a podcast the other day that literally changed my perspective on myself. And I really actually feel fired up about this enough to get this message out there because we've talked on this podcast a lot about ego. And we've demonized ego to an extent to where it's the undoing of a lot of business owners, which undoubtedly it is. It undoes relationships. It undoes businesses. I'm not going to challenge you on that. What I am going to challenge you on, and I'm giving full credit to a man named Case Kenny. And I heard this podcast. His podcast is called New Mindset Who Dis. And I had a friend send it to me and I listened to it because I've been going through some struggles finding where my ego lies in the level it should play in my life, right? There's been times in my life where I felt like I was untouchable. There's been times in my life where I felt like nothing. But this helped me realize that there is a healthy amount of ego and this guy calls it the compassionate side of your ego, which I didn't know there was multiple sides, but apparently there is. But it allows you to do more, say more, accomplish more, because those times where I felt like my ego was nothing, I didn't want to accomplish. It took my will to drive away. So I completely identify with this. And I'm going to challenge what we've said before in the past about the role of ego and how it needs to be as small as possible, but there needs to be a healthy line of ego based on what I've learned here. So this guy says, it requires introspection and looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, what are my motivations? So talk about a little bit about the people you've encountered in your business career where ego was too much, and it will ultimately lead to their undoing if it already hasn't.
Yeah, I mean, the number one thing, and this is a real estate podcast, so I'll draw it back to the conclusions that I've had in my real estate experience, because that's what I can speak to, is, when I was spending time with Gary's Top 100, I was in the room with the top 100 real estate agents around the country from the number one real estate company by agent count. And holy cow, the egos were so high, and that it was built on such a weak foundation that they had all these blind spots that they realized that their businesses are unstable. So for example, like some of the agents up there were selling thousands of homes per year and on the brink of bankruptcy. And that's actually the definition of failure in business, is to create a big business that doesn't create any profit or do anything good for anybody. And I know that the people that were in that organization weren't having massive success either. So building a mediocre company that doesn't help anybody, that is defeating of itself. And most of the time, that is because of the ego of the leader, because the leader sets the tone for everybody else. And as you alluded to, Bruce, there is an optimal amount of ego. So you have to have some. You can't have none, where you don't have any confidence in what you're doing and you don't have any belief in your vision or anything like that. And then there's the other side of it that is like this wild optimism, that you can achieve anything or it'll all be okay, and I'm not going to track my numbers and I'll just do the best I can. And if I give it my best, then that's good enough. The reality is, when you think like that, there's eventually going to be something that comes into your life that disrupts it. So there's a healthy balance between the optimism and not having any confidence in yourself, and being having the understanding of what you do know and what you don't know. And I think there's like this Mark Twain quote of, it's not what you don't know, it's what you don't know that you think is so, or something like that. That like really tears people apart. And so if you really believe in something that isn't true, that can be the downfall of you. And that's just because of your ego. Or you're selling 1,000 units a year to get on stage, but you don't have any profit. No one's getting value from you. That's just ego. You made it all about you. So again, there's a bunch of different ways to look at it. So I want to hear what your insights are from that podcast, Bruce. Sounds really interesting.
Yeah, I think the takeaway for me was ego. He ties ego to motivation almost, to where and your self-worth is wrapped up in that too, in this like bundle that is your ego. So like you said, you don't want to have zero ego, because then there's no will to do anything. And that's what he says, is that, you can't accomplish if it's almost like this is the will to live. It's the will to accomplish, breathe, do anything outside of getting out of bed. And like I said, I've experienced that. So, when your ego gets out of control, like you said, it can be your undoing, and then you almost focus on yourself and not others. But so the insights that I got is that I was in a place where, you said something the other day to me that blew my mind again. It's leaders eat last. Okay. So, and that's in a practice of just practicing gratitude too, right? We did this thing, but before I say my part in it at all, I'm going to give away all of the credit to everybody around me. And I've been practicing that. And every time I interact with someone who I care about, or we have a conversation, really every level above just a baseline, hey, how are you doing, is like, I say, I'm thankful for connecting with you today. Like, thank you for sharing that with me. I learned this from you. It's like I practice that every single day. And what that helps me do is keep it down, right? Because I'm not thinking like, oh, what'd you do for me? Like, I'm trying to make that person feel good for spending that time with me because I value it. So like, I'm trying to give away the credit, and what it's helped me do is keep the ego down, but also this helped me, know that I need to get it up a little bit. So I'm currently, if I can be vulnerable, trying to find that optimal level to where my motivation is tip top. I'm able to focus on other people around me and add value. And I don't let it get to the point where I start turning inward. So it's really been profound for me because it's kind of given me the permission to have an ego, because it's in a lot of our conversations, it's demonized. Like, oh, he's egotistical. Oh, he's only concerned about himself. He's egocentric. Like, that's bad. When people perceive you that way, that's bad. But there's also something I want to touch on to other people's opinions of you that I'm going to write down here. But there's an optimal level, and like I said, that can allow you to help and serve others at the highest possible level.
Yep, I hear you. And I think Aristotle said it. I was reading a book last night and it talked about the same exact thing. It's like life truly begins when you become selfless, or you start living for others, or some sort of version of that, where it's like what happens to you and all of this stuff, it doesn't matter. It's all about how you can live for others and to improve everybody around you. And when you have that kind of mindset and you actually live by it, you're going to get probably more than you give. So I mean, we just had this conversation in our team meeting this morning, which was how, like, you just need to give, and put yourself in a room where you can add value to other people in some way. And if you give enough to enough people, you're eventually going to get back. And the way that you give is like, again, it goes back to ego, because if you're just giving to yourself and not giving to anybody else, like you being fat and lazy at the top and getting it all for yourself with no one else getting it can be a real problem long term. I mean, you're just living life for yourself instead of those around you. And that is a life that is not full of fulfillment. And that's why you see a lot of these empty egos out there that have, they might have a big business. I mean, I remember, man, like, sorry to bring this up, but like 2 years ago, there was a top producing agent that committed suicide. Because he was a top producer and he was killing it, and he had a family too, and he just felt unfulfilled, right? He just was not, he was doing things that, the external environment around him was impacting who he was internally. So this individual, I was talking with one of the leaders, I was like, I wish we could have done something. I wish we could have had more conversations, more relationships, because life at the end of the day is all about relationships. And who you're adding value to, who you care about, who cares about you. If people are going through hard times, how you can connect with them. And that's something that, we're bringing into the Momentum brand, is like, how do we get more involved in our agents' life? How do we build not just surface level relationships, but really get to know them and their families and how they operate. And then see what we can do to improve people's insides. So that way, no matter what happens externally, like, the world could be like, some people who have like really optimal ego, the world could be falling around them. And then inside they're perfectly content. Right? Like that's the goal, right? Is to be able to stay calm when everybody's losing it. because you're totally content with who you are. You are the same person in every single room that you go into. That's like the perfect ego. It's like you are your true, authentic, genuine self. You don't need to act differently to impress other people. You just, and I think your buddy said this on the other podcast the other day. He's like, I just want to spend time with people where I don't have to change myself. And yes, there is like some truth to that. Like you want to be authentic with the other side of the ego being like, you want to be authentic and you want to have the room to grow into your personal development. And the cool thing is with real estate sales specifically is that your business will grow to your level of personal development. It starts there. You're not just selling real estate. You're a business owner. You need to study business. You need to study personal development. How do you become somebody who owns $1 million business, who owns a $5 million business? It starts with who you become, how you treat other people, how you connect with other people, and why you're doing what you're doing, and then sharing that mission with others.
So if you're someone who goes into a room and feels like they need to be somebody else, that would be someone who has a lack of ego. You don't have enough to have, to self-identify as this is my authentic self, right? And then if you're going into the room and you're meeting with all these people room to room and you find yourself only talking about yourself, maybe you're on the high side of the scale. So I just drew this while you were talking, it's like I kind of see this ego continuum as like a speedometer almost. Like 0, you're not moving anywhere, you're not doing anything. If you're going 120 miles an hour, you're talking about yourself, you're concerned about yourself. Like let's do the speed limit right in the middle. The ideal optimal level of ego where you're accomplishing at a high level, your fuel economy is great, so to speak. I don't know, I'm maybe trying to make an analogy here, but like there's an ideal, and it's constantly, even day to day for me, I'm like, oh nope, I'm going a little too fast, nope, I'm a little slow, and then I put things around. This is what I'm working on now, is putting things around me to help keep me right here, like straight up an optimal level of ego to where I can perform at a high level but not get self-focused, because that's a weakness of mine, is like when I'm going and I'm achieving, I start to turn inward a little bit. And this is me being vulnerable again, and maybe someone identifies with this. I start to turn inward a little bit, and now I almost have this like stop, because I've learned that I need to, okay, practice gratitude, call somebody, express, how much someone means to you and give it away. And then I slow down a little bit. So this simple 15-minute podcast has been transformational for me, because I've been uber aware of ego since, you and I got in business together. But I saw it only from a negative point of view and not from its ability to be positive and help me. So that's why I wanted to spend an episode talking about this, because maybe someone on either end of that continuum can identify and say like, oh, I need to kind of get myself in check, or I do have worth, like I can help people, I do have knowledge. And like, tying it back to real estate sales, like I give great service, but I have a problem getting myself out there. What's my value prop? Like there's ways to amp it up to where you are hitting your stride and operating at your highest level, and you're going to help people.
Yeah. And if you're listening to this and maybe your ego isn't so high, there is something that you are better at than everybody else that you know. And you need to know thyself. And it's the first lesson in Think Bigger, which is a Tiger 21 book. It's an amazing book. And it talks about like the first thing that business owners do is understand who they are internally, how they are wired, what are their competitive advantages versus other people. What are the things that have happened in their life that are obstacles that happened for them so they could learn a lesson and implement it in business? And the key is like really reflecting on where you're at. And it's the same thing with momentum, right? Like we could have gigantic heads. Maybe we already do, right? And we're, because we have had massive success in a year. My coach just said he doesn't think anybody has recruited that many agents in 1 year to their company. And I said to him, I was like, that wasn't something that just happened overnight because we're so wonderful. This has been 5 years in the making, building relationships and adding value to others. And we want to 10x that value. And we're just getting started, and we need to be careful and always check our ego at the door. Hey, is what I'm saying, is what I'm communicating, is it about me, or is it about adding value to others? Because a lot of people, when they experience success, it just becomes about like attention on me. Like you don't want to claim the results of everything. You want to give it to your team. I saw this as a big issue the other day when I saw one of my real estate agent colleagues post a post saying like, here's all my numbers. And this person didn't even tag their team members who do a lot of work for them. They didn't share gratitude for the team members. There was no conversation about how many families they served and how grateful they are to have the opportunity to connect with so many wonderful people. It was just straight ego, chest pumping that's gonna push everybody away in their world. And so that's what I'm talking about. That was too much ego, right? Like there should be like, hey, like, yes, we made this accomplishment and I was the primary driver of it. And without the support of all of these people and my customers and my family and all these things, none of it would have been possible. Or even a previous mentor, right? Like people forget like everything that they're building is a foundation. Like some of the stuff that I've had success from was because of my mentor, Gene, at the investment bank that I had, that he spent hours and hours and hours working on my mindset, teaching me the internal way of how things work. And I still use what he taught me today. Right. And giving back in that way, which is acknowledging where you have come from and where you have gained your skills and who has helped you get there, I think is like the ultimate thing. Yes, you want to claim some level of accountability for your success and failures. And you need to recognize when you win, it's the team win. It is not your win. It is the team first. It's the organization first. And you are second. Leaders eat last. That's what I'm talking about.
I love that quote. That the leaders eat last thing, it just blew my mind. And then I heard this podcast that's like, we got to get on here and talk about this. And I have to share a win that I had in figuring something out, and maybe someone can benefit from this. We did a year-end post on the Momentum page where we kind of went through the year, and yeah, like you said, almost at 100 agents in a year. We built the platform, but it's not because of us. Like the agents having success and then sharing it, allowing us to share it, that's what's made the difference for us. And every single day I'm seeing this is my first day at Momentum. Then people are so proud to be a part of an organization where we don't care about us. All we care about is you winning, and we're going to help you every step of the way to get there. Whatever we can do.
And we want to be better at it.
What's that?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And we just want to be better at it too. Like that's the thing. Like we're pretty good, but we know there's a lot of room for improvement and building connection and rapport. And this year with COVID has been really hard. And so I want to help more. So like if you're hearing this, like let's sit down and have coffee. Let's do a business plan. Let's figure out what your strengths are. Figure out how we can help you solve some of your business or life problems. We're having a lot of conversations about how do I, I'm having this issue with my spouse. I'm having this issue with my kids. I'm having, work life balance issues. And that'll happen when you get to the $6 to $8 million level of production. That's where most of our agents are going towards. And they're starting to have all of their systems and models break down on how they operate their personal and business life. And we've been there. Like we want to help because we've been there. We know a lot of the tips and tricks that you can do. There's simple exercises of getting everybody on the same page that you need to do with your family members when you get to that level, just so you can maximize your time with them and maximize your time in the business and get on the same page in regards to expectations.
Yeah, we're just always trying to give it all away and find other ways to help, and that's it's awesome I'm grateful to be a part of it. So some actionable items here. I'm going to drop this episode in the show notes for anyone who's interested on this thing that inspired me so much. Again, it's Case Kenny. He's on Instagram. I listen to it on Spotify. It's on any podcast app. It's called New Mindset Who Dis. I've already reached out to him. I want to try to get him on here. So some actionable items. If you're someone who's sitting there and you feel like your ego isn't where it is, my suggestion is look at your strengths. Like take the Strength Finder test, take some more personality tests to figure out where your strengths are. And then because John said, you're better at something than everybody else is. Focus on that. Find someone out there that could benefit from your expertise in X, and your ego will pop right up, and you'll and then you might create another opportunity for yourself. Could be huge. On the other side, if you're someone who is sitting there and your stomach's burning a little bit because maybe you're realizing your ego is a little bit too high, something you can do, practice gratefulness, practice gratitude, give some wins away to your team, and I guarantee it'll bring you right down to that ideal zone. And I have to do both of those things. Like I said, I'm working on trying to stay in the middle. I'm working on both of those things to really sharpen this for me. So thank you once again, man, for spending some time with me. I just hope that one person maybe is touched by this, and this will all be worth it. So thank you once again, and another Move with Momentum podcast episode in the books.
Thank you so much, Bruce. See ya.